Hello class, I'm in your ebook for the CompTIA A Plus guide, and I'm in the table of contents here. I'm just going to jump to chapter 4. Let's get rid of this and go right to chapter 4. And we open up talking about common cloud models. There's 3 to look at here, and I'll start with the beginning one, which probably is not as most common for you, but that is infrastructure as a service. And when we say infrastructure, we're talking about the storage of your data, your programs, your networking, and the networking services. That doesn't include the operating system or the programs and apps themselves. So the user has to provide that, right? So the vendor supplies just the hardware that things are going to run on, the operating system and the application that users may get access to, right? Does that make sense? So some examples of that, which you're probably not as familiar with, the Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services is very popular for large organizations. So that's infrastructure. Think of the hardware, the backbones of the system that things need to run on and be installed on. A more common model for you might be software as a service, SaaS. So the first letter of this acronym is your clue, right? I for infrastructure, S for software, and we're going to get to P in a minute. But software as a server has to do with the software hosted on the server that you only need a web browser to get access to. So an example of that would be Google Docs and Office 365, and probably less familiar Basecamp for project management, which by the way works really good, and the Salesforce application. The user just needs a browser to get to that information. And you've probably all had a chance to try Google Docs, and it's familiar to you. The least common example would be, now we're at the P, platform as a service, PaaS. Now, what that allows the user to focus on is just the software itself. The vendor that's providing this infrastructure also provides the operating system that's going to run on that. The user doesn't have to provide that. You focus strictly on the software you're developing. You don't worry about issues with the operating system and hardware. The vendor provides that, and some examples would be Oracle Cloud is one of the big players, and Microsoft Azure, and of course the Google Cloud also. Some of these cross over, like Microsoft Azure is listed as platform as a service and infrastructure as a service, depending on how it's being used, right? So, but the most familiar one, you're probably going to like it, is software as a service, right? Even using my IT lab, those are taking training for CIT 15, you get a chance to see that. You get to it with a web browser, right? And let me jump back down. That's a big chunk of chapter 4. Let me jump down to the next section, and that has to do with virtualization, and kind of a hard concept. You might never have touched this type of environment, but if you took a class at Fresno City College, a face-to-face class that is, sitting in a classroom, they now are virtualized environments. The image of that workstation you're sitting in front of gets downloaded from the server and deployed when it gets turned on, right? So it's not sitting there empty until it gets turned on, and the image gets deployed, and you're running software that's on a server somewhere. In this case, on the network at the college grounds, but it could be a server that's located in the cloud using high-speed backbone internet to get to for large organizations. When you think of this, it's, let me just click on this link here. I always tell you to look at that. So this is desktop virtualization, right? The creation of the user interface to the computer that's hosted on a central server somewhere far away. So then you ask yourself the question, well, when would I want that? Well, if you're a medical center, maybe you want that at the front desk for intake, because you don't want someone to do a smash and grab in the window and grab all that client information. That information is stored on a server in a locked room, right? You've got a thin client system for intake at the front office there. It could also be at an auto repair store or parts department store where there's no reason for a high-end system to be on that desktop counter. It's just kind of not a dumb terminal, but we call it a thin client networking, where it's a low-powered computer. Like we're talking Intel i3, entry-level Intel i5, not the high-end i5. Definitely not an Intel i7 processor. You don't need that horsepower for a thin client. your image gets deployed on the system, it gets turned on, and you get the interface for the user to work with the mouse movements, clicks, keyboard clicks. But all that software is in the back room in the server or in the cloud somewhere, right? And you need a good networking system wired together. Wireless probably not good for that type of environment, but that's virtualization. So the thin client networking, I think that's a link. Oh, no, maybe that one. No, here's where I want to go. Virtual desktop infrastructure. All right, and you'll see that term used when you're in a virtualized environment. That's infrastructure allows the organization, and this is the backend server side, but to offer users remote access to what we call an enterprise computing system, large computing systems that you would have in a larger organization, if that makes sense. So that is the last part of this chapter. It's a short chapter. You know, if you can kind of wrap your head around the idea that there's different levels of service that these providers can give you. It could be the infrastructure, and you decide on the OS and the programs get loaded on that networking and the storage capability from the provider, or it could be the software where you know it's all there. The back end operating system is on the back end of that. You just need a web browser for a client. Could be a tablet or a phone to get to that software, because you can do word processing on a cell phone now, right? And then at the higher level, you got the platform as a service. So more services are offered to the user, not just the hardware, but the operating system. And that kind of wraps up chapter 4. So hopefully it makes sense. If you have questions, send me an email. I'll see you on the net. Thanks. Bye for now.